femtech, the most female tech sector, 70% of the funding is still going to men.
It's because they invest in the person, not the business. People invest in what they understand. The white men have the money.
I don't think men see any barriers to it. If they think there's a commercial opportunity, they'll go for it.
Testosterone will make you confident. So there's some sort of inbuilt biology.
But then if you've got a woman who's trying to build a software business, it's like, what are you doing? You know, stay in your lane.
If someone's looking to invest in someone when they're 30 and stuff, even a woman might think, just got married, might be about to have a kid. Is this a brilliant time to invest? Do you think there is a lot of sort of prejudice going on that's more conscious?
Women have a problem getting their businesses funded in the UK. Don't believe me? Well, the first femtech unicorn, a period tracking app, was founded by 2 men. And 70% of all femtech funding, that's funding for a wide range of solutions, software devices, diagnostics that help to improve healthcare for women, goes to men. Yet 50% of the wealth in the UK, and self-made wealth at that, is owned by women. I'm talking to Sarah Turner, co-founder and CEO of the Angel Academy, about how she's trying to change that, why you don't need to be a millionaire or have a wild Silicon Valley style attitude to get involved. Check it out.
Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
For you, what's sort of going on at the moment? What's the big news in your life, or, you know, what's keeping you up at night, as they say?
Keeping me up at night. Oh, lots of things. I think as any business owner probably feels, you know, are you doing enough? Are you focusing your time on the right things, et cetera, et cetera? It's a very challenging market right now for anyone in the investment space. I think, you know, generally it's a challenging business market, isn't it? We feel like it's a period of uncertainty, but investors are certainly being extremely cautious at the moment.
Everyone's waiting for the budget in this country, trying to work out whether they're even going to stay in the country, as far as I can work out. Where did this start, Sarah? You were an entrepreneur. I mean, your focus now is Angel Academe.
Yeah.
Okay. And prior to that, you were in digital tech and things. Were you an entrepreneur, founder, or?
Yeah, I had a consulting business. I had my own consulting business. It wasn't a high growth tech startup, but I was running a business, so aware of the challenges. A lot of my work was in and around startups, and particularly helping to connect them with large companies, so the corporate innovation type space. I had, you know, kind of been going to lots of pitch events and got myself into a fortunate financial position where I could afford to do a little bit of angel investing, join various angel networks that existed in London at that time, and was often the only woman in the room, usually, probably, and you know, didn't feel the female founders that came to pitch rarely came away with any funding, and it just didn't feel it kind of resonated with the male investors in the room, and made me start to think, why aren't there more women doing this? Why aren't there more women angel investing? And I got all these rather kind of strange replies about women being risk averse and women not building scalable businesses. You know, female businesses are rather niche, and kind of lots of stuff that I just thought didn't marry with my experience, certainly didn't marry with who I am. And, kind of bit of an idea was sparked to set something up that was a bit more female friendly, not women only, but really how do we get more women participating in this sector and also get more money into these female startups?
I've said this many times, I guess, probably on this podcast, but I mean, it sounds like you're on a similar page. Is the stats are about women and black people and stuff receiving investment, but the bit I don't like is when that is just inferred as it's sexism, it's racism, and I'm like, look, people invest in what they understand. The white men have the money and they're going to invest in stuff that makes sense. You said resonate. I think it's a good word, whether it be the product idea or just the simple fact, you know, I'm just thinking, am I going to be comfortable being very hard on this person or very, you know, whatever. It's a sort of, you know, it's you understand someone like you more. So do you think there's there's certainly that element, but do you think there is a lot of sort of prejudice going on that's more conscious?
I don't think it's conscious at all. Most of the people I meet are kind of good, decent people, and they'd be horrified if you suggested they were biased. So I think it's much more unconscious bias. It's very subtle. It's quite cultural. We're only hearing pictures these days from female founders. Obviously, I've heard
you own it in the Angel Network,
in the Angel Academy, because that's our focus. So we're not always comparing them to the men, but obviously I have heard a lot of men pitch in my day, and there are differences in how women communicate. I think there are differences in the signals we get. There might even just be something about men's voices being deeper, so they sound more authoritative somehow. Lots of very kind of subtle stuff that goes on, both in how women communicate, but also how women are perceived, how those signals are perceived. We have got a stereotype, a media stereotype of what male tech businesses look like. And it's, Mark Zuckerberg in his hoodie, or one of the Google founders, or even kind of, Bill Gates for the older generation. Where are the women?
Well, I mean, you've hit an amusing topic for me that there is no official dress for women. It feels like men have to wear a suit. I would never dare comment on what a woman wears. I don't know whether it is or isn't smart. I wouldn't dare. Of course, they look absolutely fabulous. Do you know what I mean? But you're right. Yeah, I like your broader point about, what is the blueprint for how you're supposed to lead. And there are some, big female entrepreneurs out there, aren't there? But it's less, in some ways what you're saying is that American startup culture that we've sort of inherited, which is very Silicon Valley and it's very male. There's that hilarious stuff about, look how many products are just stuff that appeals to young men, basically. It's a sort of, those are the things that will get funding. So maybe there's less of a vision of what it should be.
It's not just limited to that. Yes, we have got lots of female entrepreneurs, lots of role models, but they do tend to be much more, well, there are fewer of them, but they're much more likely to be found in the more typically female areas. So a lot of retail, consumer businesses, things like that, not in tech. But then, we had Flow announced over $200 million of funding a couple of weeks ago.
I know it's that. What's that one?
Now the first unicorn in the femtech sector.
Because this is a
founded by two men with
sanitary thing, or it's
period tracking app. Founded by two men with no sector expertise. I'm sure they're absolutely brilliant at what they do, and they brought some women onto their team. But it just feels to me, I know lots of female femtech founders building great businesses, and they struggle to raise even small amounts of funding. Everything's been painful for them. So, it does feel like a kick in the teeth to me and people who kind of part of our network that, the first femtech unicorn is founded by two men. Why them? Why not one of the other period tracking apps that's at least got one female co-founder? It feels something like investors are still, whatever the sector, still more confident.
Still men, mostly.
Still confident backing other
it's a vicious circle, isn't it?
So I think Sifter did some analysis last year, and femtech, the most female tech sector, 70% of the funding is still going to men.
Yeah. And in your own small way, therefore, you've tried to bring together, these are 1,000 registered investors. Are they majority women, or?
They are. So, part of the mission is very much about mobilizing more women as angel investors. So angel investors are often those first investors in the business when the business is still young. We put in some of our own money directly into the business in exchange for, a small percentage of ownership. And, we get to work quite closely with those businesses. Women own half the net wealth in the UK, so I was quite surprised when I was going to these angel networks, and there were no. Is
that right? So 50% of the wealth in the UK is owned by women. Yeah.
And most of that is self-earned, so it's not proceedings from divorce or inherited wealth. It's self-earned, but I think the challenge is that wealth has typically been earned in different sectors, different ways. Networks are different. So women, for one reason or another, have never kind of rubbed shoulders with angel investors, and the networks are typically run by men for men. So it's kind of like a parallel universe. So I was very kind of passionate about trying to engage more women in this, partly because, we've got some good data to show that women are much more likely to back other women. The signals will resonate more with other women. But partly because, we want their input in the businesses that get investment, get that first early kind of lift off. You see what I mean? If we have a not very diverse investor community, then we're not going to have diverse businesses being built and funded.
Do you think maybe, there's an argument that rather than us all trying to say we're the same, so, there's equality, but then there's also people saying, well, it should be the same. It's maybe there are differences, there's differences in how you operate. I think we sort of do recognize that. So therefore we shouldn't try and replicate how men do it. Do you know what I mean? In a way, just whatever the subtle differences are, let's just have different ways of doing things, different ways. It's almost impossible to draw out the picture because we only really know the Silicon Valley model.
I think that's absolutely right. And in terms of kind of how we operate at Angel Academy, it's very much designed to appeal to women. But actually what's happened, the men in our network like our approach as well, or the ones that come towards us. So actually, there's plenty of common ground there, but it is thinking a little bit differently. And I absolutely agree with you about challenging that Silicon Valley model, which is, you live with a 90% risk of failure because there's a 10% chance of a, 100x return on your investment. And, it's not only extremely high risk, but kind of, money gets pulled into businesses that play a certain game. And I think a lot of good opportunities end up being starved of the funding and actually are probably better businesses long term.
It's one of these issues, though, that you get, look, as a white man you do, but you can get quite lost in standing on landmines of language and sort of like people getting upset with you. There's stuff to talk about. If I take a simple anecdotal experience, I've trained more than this, but as in, God, that sounds arrogant, but as in like 10 people in this firm, I have taken on trips over periods of time and sort of taught them how to do it. And of those, without exception, and there were more women than men I took because we're like 60% women, is that the men I would say to them, look, you're going to watch me do 10, 20, 30 meetings and then I want you to do it, and I'm going to watch, or, you got to take the lead. And the men are all like, yeah, great. Okay, here we go. And then when they're okay, I'm ready, let's do it. And, but they've got this sort of, but the girls will all refuse. And maybe that's how I'm approaching it or whatever, but they're just like, they would get to the 30th meeting and just say, Andy, you do it. I'm not comfortable,
I think, in what I would say to that is that the men are overconfident in their own abilities,
ego.
And the women are a little bit underconfident. And, I find that a bit frustrating as well. And, we're coaching never apologize. You've got nothing to apologize. Start a sentence with sorry. And it's like, no, don't apologize. So, that you have got to be confident as a founder. To
an extent, you got to.
And project your confidence. You are asking people to put their hard-earned money to work in your business. So, stop being silly, and you can do the meetings and just kind of get on with it.
But you're almost expecting, a lot's linked to, testosterone will make you confident. It makes you confident if you take testosterone injections, so there's some sort of inbuilt biology. So maybe you got to be confident, but maybe you don't need to be like, like a bull, like, ego.
Well,
confident.
I think there's confidence and then there's overconfidence, isn't there? And yes, testosterone definitely has its advantages, but we've got testosterone as well. We can do it, but for me, actually, nothing makes you more confident than knowing your material. So, you've got to understand your business inside and out and kind of grasp all the facts and be prepared for all the questions. And if you can get yourself into that position, yes, you'll be nervous about presenting to a room full of strangers who are often older than you and have got their challenging questions and things like that. But, you will come across as confident because you know your stuff. So be prepared. You can overcome all these confidence issues, can't you? And,
I find it though as a topic, it's, even now it's like I'm trying to think carefully about how to approach the subject. We just need to fucking crack it out a little bit and be, it's like, okay, so what they were very happy to say in our firm is we'll be trying to sort something out, and people say, look, I don't want to be rude, but we need a woman involved because they're much more organized and better, And so you get these sort of things, okay to do it the other way around, but when you start doing it the other way. So it's like one of the big like elephants in the room, is babies. And it's like, well, men should do more of their thing and stuff. And it's like, look, yeah, that's fine and everything, but I'm a father. I've seen that. My wife's a GP. I've seen her go through something that literally biologically turned her into a mother. I did not have the same exact chemical reactions in my body. I felt very protective of her, but I didn't get this very close bond with my kids. That's taken years to develop. It's like it's wired up differently. It came up the other day, and it was very funny because we were talking about forced shared parental leave that they do in Iceland. So you sort of make the other side take some. But of course, I'm sure my wife would say the same, but the lady at the time was like, yeah, but I'm still there in the background, aren't I? Like, there's like a lack, and it makes me laugh because it should, because there's like a lack of trust that men won't be capable of doing it. And but
they all go and meet up with each other in the cafes, don't they? And I've read about that as well.
Well, so the men do they?
Yeah. They form their own networks, all these men on paternity leave, and they have a lovely time. And, the kids are all playing together, I suppose. But
this is something that you have to be really careful how you speak about it. But, obviously there's a difference here. Do you know what I mean? There's a difference in someone's, and you can't say it, but I'm just going to say it because that's what we're here to do. But, if someone's looking to invest in someone when they're 30 and stuff, even a woman might think, just got married, might be about to have a kid. Is this a brilliant time to invest? And you're supposed to you can't say that. You can't do any of that. But, there were aspects of that. My dear sister who passed, she went she was 2 years older than me. She was, a family business. She was further ahead. She went and had the kids, and she was very vocal on this when she came back because she lost all her clients. It set her back. But she was like, and I was like, oh, sorry, sis. And she was just like, no, you should be ahead of me. That's what's happened, and you can talk like that as sisters. I mean, that element is like probably something men are always going to feel very sort of nervous about talking about and stuff, but should it be talked about? You're going to invest in someone, and you say to someone, you just married, you're 30, you're really going to do a startup right now?
I think, I think it's difficult, isn't it? But I think it's possible to ask the questions as long as you haven't made up your mind beforehand, as long as you're open-minded. Because, most of the women we've backed, I think, have got families, have got children of various ages and stuff like that. And it's just not an issue. We've had people pitch to us while pregnant. I think it's then quite perfectly normal to sort of ask what are their plans for maternity. Women have been having babies for millennia,
apparently.
And, what we're looking for is people who've got a plan for what happens when they're off. So, it's not just going to be them in the business. So if they want to take time out, who's going to cover what they're doing? And as long as the plan is reasonable, and, why wouldn't we? Because there's always, you can't employ women and not.
No, well, I'm almost edging towards what might happen as a man is rather than ask questions, they just think, I'll leave that.
Yeah.
I don't, she's she's pitching and she's pregnant. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But because you daren't get involved. And actually probably what needs to happen is have a conversation about that. And that may be something that,
Yeah.
you know, it's a good example of when a woman to woman, you know, could maybe talk in a bit more comfortably about something, you know.
But I think what's wrong is to write women off because they may get pregnant. You know,
Well, we could get divorced. I've got divorced. That screws your life up.
You don't know, and not even, you know, and what we try and do is build a relationship with the founders that we're investing in. And, you know, we probably don't go there about what their family plans are and things because, you know, we know them well enough that they would approach it sensibly. They would have some cover in their business for while they're away. You know,
almost talking about it right now is very awkward. Like almost everything you try and do in this subject, it's like, well, you know, you could get people very up. Why are you even bringing that up or anything? But just to try and sort of
thinking, you know, there's a couple of founders that have had babies recently, and you know, they've told us, of course they have, but you know, no wobbles in the business. It just carries on because they have planned from this. Businesses can cope with people, even key people, taking a bit of time off, can't they? Because, you know, it does happen. People get sick as well, don't they? Or they, you know, they lose somebody. So there's bereavement leave. We all have to cope with challenging situations in our business.
And out of interest, just in your example you gave of a pregnant woman's pitching and stuff, I mean, in that instance, you know, I assume you asked and she was like, well, I've got another founder or whatever's going to happen, basically.
Well, that's what we're looking for. So that's, you know, if you are thinking about having children, it's probably a good idea to have a co-founder in your business. So it's not just you, because then that makes it easy. And, you know, the story you can tell is about while I'm away, you know, Susie or whoever it is can cover the business and we'll bring somebody in to do this and this. And, you know, as long as the plan is kind of credible, then
great. How do you think it affects, because obviously if we invest in men's ideas, generally we're seeing the sort of the products that are coming to market are more male orientated and stuff like that. And so therefore, do you think there is a lack of female technology or, you know, a lack of different thinking in products as well?
I think, oh yes, there's, you know, the cliche in tech, isn't it? Pink it and shrink it for women. So a lot
the cliche is, I didn't even ever heard that. Pink it and shrink it.
A lot of early mobile phones, that was the approach they took. So, you know, there were no kind of, you know, when Apple first launched, there was all their health apps. There was nothing around period tracking and things like, you know, anything that was relevant to women. So yes, there is a blinkered approach to design of tech when you're not including more women in its design. But I think, you know, increasingly women are recognized as kind of a really important consumer base. So, you know, they're
the ultimate consumer base. I mean, they've been recognized for, like, it's been known that they brought all men and female cosmetics and household goods. You know, it's like men don't buy skincare, so women buy skincare.
Even cars.
For men.
Men have women have a huge amount of, even if they're not ultimately making the decision, they have a lot of influence and all those other things. So ignore women in your design at your peril. There's been back to femtech, there's been a lot of discussion about femtech the last few years. Women's health is this traditionally underserved part of the market. So people have recognized the opportunities. But, you know, even in femtech, where you'd think you'd need to have at least one female founder for the business to be credible in that market, most of the funding is still going to male-only teams.
So tell us more about Angel Academe in terms of, I mean, you've made quite a lot of investments. You know, how does it work? It's you have meetings, or it's how does it function, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, we are ultimately a marketplace business, although a lot of what we do is face to face. So, you know, on the one hand, we're meeting lots of founders and we're constantly sort of screening them and selecting the best opportunities to put in front of our network. And on the other hand, we're a network of angel investors and they come to events that we run. We're running regular pitch events so that they can hear from these entrepreneurs, but we also do sort of educational stuff in the background. How do you get started with angel investing? What do the legal documents mean? What are the tax breaks? What's going on in the fintech sector, for example? So a lot of activity to kind of engage our angels and attract new ones, and yes, other activity to kind of attract the right kind of entrepreneurs that we think our network would be interested in, and yes, bringing them
in London. Is this or nationally or?
So London is where most of the network is based, near to London, but we do quite a lot of stuff online because we've got some investors that are in the US or Ireland or Cornwall or out of London, and also entrepreneurs. We like to see entrepreneurs from the whole country, and it's great to meet in person, but it's not always easy. Or
how do you register as an angel? Do you have to sort of show you've got a certain amount of money, or?
Yeah, so it's a regulated industry, which means we need to check that people are aware of the risk of angel investing, because it is risky. So there is an onboarding process that we have to take new investors through, and you basically self-certify on the basis either of your net wealth or your previous experience. So there's a wealth category and a sophisticated investor category, which means you're an experienced investor already. We are targeting people who've got some money that they don't need to call on, especially at short notice. So it's people who have done reasonably well in their careers. They've typically got either kind of startup experience through their own businesses, or have worked in that ecosystem, or they're business leaders, so they've got something to contribute to these businesses as well. But wealthy, it certainly doesn't require you to be super wealthy, millionaire, Dragon's Den type people. The value of being in a network is that you can club together with other people. So our investment ticket starts at £10,000. So it is within reach of people who should be considering this type of investment. And the wealth criteria is, your salary needs to be £100,000 a year or more, or £250,000 in assets which aren't your pension or your home. So it's targeting a specific profile of person.
Do you think at the moment, do you think there's the climate's improving for investment in the UK?
Well, I hope so. We need to get some comfort around what this government is
about,
planning, what they're about. They speak of growth, but I haven't seen much evidence that they understand really what will drive growth. We angel investors benefit from some very generous tax breaks, the enterprise investment scheme. We need some comfort from this government that they're not going to
They would be
meddle with that.
Insane if they mess with EIS. It's the envy of the world. If they do that, that's it. I'm out.
Yeah, it's incredibly useful. We are, we are the biggest investment market in Europe because of the tax breaks for individuals. So it'd be mad, and it's had cross-party support. Now both parties have supported it for 30 years. So it really would be incredible if they did something, but it'd just be nice to get...
Well, they flushed around a lot in the press about capital gains tax going up to sort of income tax levels. I think now I've had some time to think about it.
And entrepreneurs relief, they want to...
That'll probably get
fiddle
boshed.
With.
That'll probably go. The business asset disposal relief, the 10%
fundamentally misunderstands the value of entrepreneurs. I heard some government spokesperson saying, well, entrepreneurs have already made a lot of money in their business. And you just think, really?
Do you know,
most entrepreneurs I know are the lowest paid people in their business.
Thank you for saying
until
that.
It's successful, and they make their money from the exit. And, at the moment, some of the money they receive at exit is shielded from CGT, wipe that out, what is the incentive left for entrepreneurs to work?
They don't seem to have enough of a voice, which is mad. I listened to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, which is one of the main, think tanks effectively on what you should be doing for tax. I mean, very clever stuff they were saying, but I was gobsmacked with some of the language they were using. Oh, these loopholes that would be, and actually then I started to look them up. I mean, everyone there is a very clever economist, went to a very nice university, Cambridge, Oxford and everything. No business people, no tax people. Because first of all, I was listening to someone and I was like, oh, that's odd what she said. Look, well, she hasn't done any tax. And then I look at the next person and I'm like, so what you get, I mean, it's quite well known that, economists who go to university tend to be very left wing, to be honest, quite in their views. They haven't gone into business, they're in the institute. So what I heard of the language, and I think, God, this is the same often in journalism. It's the same as there's big business over here, and that's evil. And then there's poor people over here, and that's it. So what I'm not hearing, and what you're saying now, is that just the entrepreneur angle doesn't have a voice. It's not, really the country's a nation of entrepreneurs, but we seem to have this narrative. And now I was just like hinting at an edge of why I'm like, I heard this the other day too, about something else. Academics giving opinions on capital gains tax or something. I'm like, why the hell are we asking an academic at Bristol or whatever, who's some very clever person, but they are going to be a very left-wing academic. What if we're going to solve these problems, you're going to need some business people and whatever to say. Because none of the questions being asked, which I'm sure you would be so happy to hear, is how are we going to make entrepreneurism explode in this country? How are we going to be the number one nation entrepreneurially? What do you need to make that happen?
It's where all the new jobs are created, isn't it? It's the dynamo for our economy. It'd be crazy to do anything. And I don't think, you can have a left-wing pro-business government, and a lot of entrepreneurs skew left as well. It's it's not as if we're all kind of right-wing capitalists. No, we do pay our tax. We want to contribute to GDP. We want to do something, but there has to be a kind of much richer understanding of actually just quite how tough it is to be an entrepreneur. And we're not paying ourselves loads of money at all. Our reward comes
when you
once
get the
we've
reward,
made a success of our business, once we sell it. So, don't penalise us then. We will pay our fair share of tax, but there's no need to increase CGT or get rid of entrepreneurs' relief. That's already much reduced from what it once was anyway. And that was under a Conservative government.
Yeah, true. And actually, the Conservatives actually tax the wealthy massively. No one wants to admit it. But I agree in the language is not a good servant to this complicated problem, left or right, or do you know what I mean? It's more like, can we focus on this group of people? Can we stop sort of saying, because some of the language I just hear, honestly, if people say loophole much more, oh, well, there's this loophole. It's not a freaking loophole. It's the law, it's a relief that was put there for a reason. It's not a loophole,
No. And then, you're right about the academic, and I just, legal is my big thing. Now they find a problem, they bring in a new law to deal with it. Our statute book is massive compared to what it was. We're this bureaucratic country, aren't we? So it's lawyers and academics, and nobody is listening to business, left or right. And I just think needs to be a rebalance.
Well, do you know why? Like, the big companies, of which there's very few, like more than 250 people, it's like 7,700 businesses. They lobby the government. They have quite a big voice, It's all the people below that, all the other entrepreneurial businesses that don't have a voice. So that's how this conversation always plays out. The academics, well, for the big companies that do that, it's like, forget about them. Yeah, they'll look after themselves. Christ, they get a meeting with the Prime Minister. You know what I mean?
Yes, and they can afford to kind of put their operations somewhere else and come up with complicated tax wheezes or whatever, and will just leave the UK if it becomes a hostile environment for them. And, that's a whole lot of jobs gone with them. But yeah, you're right. Entrepreneurs are committed to this country and growing their businesses in this country, and, make it too miserable, they'll go elsewhere. Plenty of other countries are trying to court entrepreneurs.
There are unfortunately a lot leaving now. Well, there's another simple example. If you take tax, that if you are a larger business with more than 250 employees, you get an HMRC officer who's basically assigned to your business to help you maximize everything, to help you out, help make things better. Whereas for an entrepreneur, you basically can't get any answers about VAT treatment, can't get any answers about anything complicated at all, can't get through on the phone line. It costs you way too much to get the professional advice. No one really knows the answers. You can't do deals with the revenue and have a friendly help. So basically the system works. You just have to guess and do your best. And then occasionally they come in, as they're doing to my dear client at the moment, and shutting him down. And they are wrong, HMRC. I'm sorry, you are completely wrong about this VAT argument. But you don't care because you just don't want to make any space in that industry. And and they're just going to shut him down. And he's not there. They're like, well, why didn't you find out earlier or get advice? How? If I write to you, you'll send me back one of your notices. I've read your notice. I've got a subtle problem.
You're a well-informed, experienced business person, young founder, just starting up, kind of hasn't done it before. You don't know what you don't know, do you? And it's it's so complicated now. So, and my personal bête noire is around the pensions, auto-enrollment, brilliant, really good idea.
Terrible
but the
name.
Execution and the admin of it is just awful. I'm still filling in paperwork for somebody we employed 2 years ago and left 2 years ago. And why am I still doing returns for them? And, the language is awful. You just don't even understand what they're asking you to do.
Very complicated. And actually now the tax system is so complicated. Anything, like if you wanted to introduce a relief or you want to introduce something new, the reason it's so complicated is it's being built on a base of complexity. You can't just sort of say, oh, we'll just do that. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't work. Everything is just layered. Well, I mean, for your Angel Academy, I mean, small question actually. Why the name? Because the name's spelled ACADEME. What's that supposed to do?
Angel Academy was taken as a URL.
Okay, very good.
So the first website was .me, academy.me. So
okay,
yes, and people pronounce in all different ways. Academe, we've had Academe, whatever. It's a good talking point, isn't it?
But what's the long-term goal? What do you want to really get to?
So, I mean, we're investing in female founders. We need to prove that female founders can build scalable technology businesses and have magnificent exits and deliver great returns to investors, because that's our thesis. That's what we've been encouraging people to invest in, and that's what I've personally been investing in as well. So that's the sort of goal, and then that will drive success of our own organization. And I suppose personally, I'd love to see Angel Academy continue when I'm no longer working full time. So I want to be able to hand over to the next generation at some point. So I want our work recognised. And
are there a lot of female angel investment networks?
Very few,
really,
and they're
generally
small.
all general.
I mean, we've been going 10 years. We were very much the first in the UK. And there's a small handful now, but we're all underpowered, all under-resourced, all trying to grow, and it's it is a difficult market to operate in at the moment. But if we can get it's a difficult exit market. Not very many exits at the moment.
It's a nightmare
so that's
to raise
what
money.
and nobody can raise money to acquire companies. So exit options are more limited than they might be. But I think that's what we all need, not just the female-focused angel networks, but everyone needs to be able to demonstrate this is a good asset class. I'd love to see a future where we didn't need to talk about gender because it was irrelevant. You had a diverse investor community and it's a broad range of founders getting invested. That would definitely be success for us. And But I don't, there's nothing that we do that's women only. And there are lots of men in our organization investing. Most of the founding teams we back are mixed gender, not all of them, but a lot of them are. My co-founder's a man. I think, the secret of success is men and women working together and respecting each other's differences, but also, there's plenty of common ground, isn't there? And
I think the bit I'm trying to almost is, if we are all different, and we are, like, you can't completely generalize because some people will be over there, even though they're, identify whatever. But if we are all different, then there's going to be things on a whole that these different groups of people are better or worse at, isn't there? So to me, to some extent, the homogeneity of sort of getting to a place where everything's all equal is maybe another land, not necessarily in what you're doing, but it's maybe another land we need to question. As in, I think we're in a mindset at the moment that we're kind of, you've got to be a perfect father, you've got to be perfect at your job, you've got to be perfect in your career, you've got to be a perfect mother. There's all this sort of pressure to be great at everything, whereas we could be a bit more like, look, we're all different. You're going to be good at some things and bad at others, and on the whole, men might be a bit better like this.
You want to bring all the talents together, don't you? So you have the wisdom of a smart network, and that's what we try to do. We just assume that everyone's got something to contribute, and we make space for everyone. But we're trying to move it from a world where it's all men making these investment decisions, usually investing in other men, to something that's a bit more mixed, but we don't want to go completely the other way and say, we have to exclude men, it has to be all women. That isn't the answer either.
I think that future's coming, to be honest. I'm a female chauvinist. I feel that there will be a time that we will, I always make the joke about, in work, you're sort of, in work, there's been this huge movement, and rightly so, to bring balance and stuff. But yeah, in the home is another playground, I would say, where, I don't know many men are in charge at home, but those are anecdotal comments. But within the angel investment network, what is the big problem facing it? What is difficult at the moment?
Well, we want, it's I keep coming back to kind of really quite a challenging market, but just, raising enough money to help fuel these businesses. I see a lot of female founded businesses that never raise quite enough money to get them to the next stage. So they're constantly underfunded, which makes it harder to raise in future, and it just perpetuates. And having a well-funded business is kind of the
fundamental.
It's fundamental because there are going to be ups and downs, there are going to be mistakes made, so you need the funding to get you through those challenges, get you a decent step further along the way before the next investment round. But if you're constantly trying to raise money, you're distracted from your business.
Can you always constantly raise money? I mean, it's sort of inevitable, isn't it? But if you can get a bit of airtime, I guess.
Yeah, well, you should. It's incredibly time-consuming thing for founders to do, and they will typically be raising money every 18 months to 2 years. But, if each round takes a year rather than 6 months, and one round, you'd never quite get enough. So the next round kicks off straight away. Taking twice as long and getting half the amount of investment is not a recipe for success.
Do you therefore, within the Angel Network, try and sort of standardize documents and sort of lock people in a bit more, and sort of, because people sort of make a decision, I'm going to do it, and then you get that sort of nervous, maybe I won't do it,
We're quite a well-disciplined network. You do get people who change their mind occasionally, but we discourage that. We make sure people know what the risks are of the business they're investing in. We get them to give a soft commit so we can communicate to the founder how much to expect roughly. And then, so it's a multi-step process with plenty of time for investors to cool off if they change their mind.
Do you employ technology to do that at all?
Just the usual technology of WhatsApp and lots of email, and we've got Google Sheets to track everything and stuff. But, we're a network of people, a lot of whom have worked together before. So there's quite a lot of trust in the
chat on the sort of
trust in the network. We're constantly communicating what are the rules of engagement. You're not doing this to waste founders' time. You're doing this because you're potentially interested in investing in the business. So it's just making sure the etiquette is there as well. And, we do a bit of vetting on the investor side, just as we vet the entrepreneurs as well. People have got to be who they say they are and kind of approaching this with the right intention, because torturing founders is not, that's not good.
There's a little bit of that goes on, isn't there?
There's quite a lot. The
people
founders
just do it
that
for their own ego.
meet, and we're looking at them for investment, and they're saying, oh, this bloke has promised us $500,000, but it hasn't come yet because it's blah, 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 blah. And it's always people who promise big amounts of money that can make a crucial difference to a business. And, they're waiting for this and this to happen. And there's all this sort of story, and then the money never materializes. I mean, the number of times we've heard that. And
would you throw someone out of your network eventually?
Well, no, we there's nobody in our network who behaves like that. But typically founders are raising money from several different sources. So there might be a wealthy individual involved. There might be a VC fund. There might be Angel Academe as well. And we'll say, oh, how much are you raising? Has any money already been committed? Oh, yes, we've had this promise of £500,000 from XYZ. The money's over here somewhere. He's in the process of blah, blah, blah. And, and it doesn't happen. There's a lot of bad behavior.
I mean,
or people investing because they want to kind of run the company themselves, or they want a board seat and they want to be paid.
Control.
They want to be paid, even when the business is very young and really not in a position to be paying consultants and stuff like that. It's like you don't invest to take cash back out again.
Have you had any good advice on this journey?
Oh, yeah. I the bit of good advice that I always come back to is somebody once said to me, plan the last day first. And
the last day of a company or last day?
Yeah. When you're thinking of setting up a business, plan the last day first.
What an interesting thought exercise.
Something that I've always not been great at. So it's a kind of work in progress. But, if you think about it, what you want the company to look like then just informs all the decisions you take along the way, whether you need investment for your business or not. It's all related to what your last day looks like, isn't it?
The last day you're there, I guess, rather than the last day of the business, isn't it? It's kind of like, picture where you want to hand over the reins.
Yeah. But, sometimes people start businesses, don't they? It's just to create a job for themselves. And so the business kind of closes when they retire, which absolutely fine, perfectly laudable if that's what you want, self-employment, or you might want something a bit bigger, or you might want something really massive, and they will have different path.
Are there any companies out of the that have gone through that you off the top of your head spring to mind as being real shining stars of coming through your angel network?
Well, they're all stars, of course they are. They're all stars.
We don't have time for all 57 million.
Yeah. We've got a business called Provenance that is very popular with our investors, and they do working mainly with the beauty industry, and it's kind of validating sustainability credentials.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, a lot of people, and there have been quite a few sort of cases that have gone to the Advertising Standards Authority where people have made fake claims about
I
their
worked in
sustainability.
skincare and cosmetics for years,
Yeah.
manufacturing products, and actually sometimes you didn't even know it was wrong.
Yeah.
You'd find out from the manufacturer. They were like, "Oh, we ran out of that organic ingredient 6 months ago," and you're like, "Yeah, but I mean, it's hard to show, isn't it?"
It's, well, you know, they've got some technology that does it and validates it. There's some blockchain involved in
Nice.
the background. Very interesting. And, you know, they were first in their market, and their time has really come because brands now, consumers care about sustainability. So brands are under a lot of pressure to, you know, to not lie and to prove that it's not lies. So that's very exciting. We've got another business that is a fertility device, Bayer Fertility. It is a cheaper, at-home alternative to IVF. So no hormones involved, so none of the life disruption of doing IVF, with similar results. And the products
With similar results.
So the product's been launched, and we're like, every investor update, there's another baby. So, you know, it's really, really cool. And so very exciting. So makes fertility treatment you know, just more accessible to more people.
I don't know exactly how they do it, but I know a little bit. You know, they pump you full of hormones to sort of try and up the fertility, and it's very expensive. It's not very pleasant. You know, it's a load of, so to be able to do something at home, that's amazing. You know,
so it's not IVF, it's ICI, intracervical insemination. It's a proven, medically validated
put
technique.
The sperm in the right place, basically.
Exactly. But there have been efforts to sort of bring this technology to market before, but typically designed by men. So the device isn't comfortable or doesn't work. And, you know, they've basically nailed, they care about how it looks and how it's communicated. And
I'm amazed men got involved designing that. You would back off at that subject, I'm sure, wouldn't you? You know, say I'm not getting involved there, but you know,
I don't know. Men. I don't think men see any barriers to it. If they think there's a commercial opportunity, they'll go for it, and they don't seem to be seen by investors as lacking credibility. But then, if you've got a woman who's trying to build a software business, doing something, you know, quite hardcore like enterprise tech, it's like, well, what are you doing? You know, stay in your lane.
Because they invest in the person, not the business, and so the investors are, you know, thinking, oh, I'm going to be comfortable with that man in that space. I can speak to him in the pub and shout at him, you know, and I'm not going to cause politics or upset. I mean, I make these jokes, and I'm sure, you know, everyone thinks I'm a complete twat for it, but you know, I've worked with my sisters, and I've had to learn that, you know, I'd have meetings with them. We were just having a meeting, you know, in this family business, and then one of them starts crying and stuff, and you're just like, what's going on? Why? You know, you've got to talk to me like that. I'm like, what? I'm just having a conversation, you know, in my world. But, you know, you learn. And I think, I mean, we've talked about it many times on this podcast, but I think there's a lot of what's going on is a readjustment of how to do business, you know, that there was a world run by men, that men would go in and, you know, as a former CEO of Black & Decker put it, you know, you get in a room, all have a big fight, and then go to the pub, you know, and it was sort of this very, you know, bashing heads, and, you know, you point and you do things. That's how I'll never forget the time I made my sis cry, because I was pointing at her, and I was just talking. I was just going, and that I was just being passionate in my point, and it came across as aggression, and you're pointing at me and you're making me feel bad, and I'm like, point back. I don't know, you know, we grew up together, you know. So the language of business, I think what you're doing is great. Thank you for coming and talking about it today. I guess you're always looking for investors, and you're always looking for female founders, and, you know, to encourage them in whatever way to seek you out and go on this journey together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, particularly investors, the investor side is much
harder
needed
to find
at the moment. We've got lots of great founders. So if you're in a fortunate position of having some money that you want to put to work, please consider being an angel investor. It's not for the faint-hearted, obviously, but it's soul enriching. It's kind of the best fun you can have at work, I think, and cheaper than an MBA, but probably better.
I always think that stat, if you had invested in, to show how much investing can work out, if you'd invested in each time you bought an Apple, if you'd spent the money that it would cost to buy an Apple iPhone every year since it's launched, if you bought one every year, and then that money, instead you bought Apple shares, how much money you have now? The number I forget, but it is like 200 million. It is unbelievable.
So bin your mobile phone.
Well, it just shows, we spend money all the time, don't we?
Yeah.
Investing is, you're not going to get it right all the time, but it can work out fabulously when it does. Okay, so we're just going to do some quick questions just to get to know you a little bit better. We called it the quick fire round. So Sarah, here we go. So what was your first job?
I had lots of crappy early job. First thing was, babysitting as a teenager, and my sister and I had it all kind of, the whole area wrapped up, and sometimes we had so much work we had to kind of subcontract to a friend. So but I've worked in a sandwich shop. I've done lots of waitressing, all the usual temp
all the
work,
classics.
All the classics, yeah.
Worst job out of those, maybe?
Oh God, I think it was a temp job doing data entry at BT, and just kind of didn't understand the data that we were entering. Nobody seemed to care about it, and just now I can see why things don't, quality in, quality out. I can see why there are so many mistakes in these systems, because
all databases are buggered. I know. I think we need to be a little more forgiving for everyone, including the dear HMRC, because how they keep a track of it all, I have no idea. It's hard to do a database for 100 people. What was your favourite subject at school?
I loved history.
Yeah, me too. Modern or classic?
Probably more modern.
Yeah, good. What's your special skill?
I am very good at remembering names in a group situation. It's my it is my one special talent.
You are not dyslexic.
No, I'm not dyslexic. No.
You even if it's a very unusual name you hadn't heard before?
Yeah, I mean, I've used to run all these in-person events, and there'd always be a good chunk of people I'd never met before. And I make a point, it's a technique, you train yourself to do it. I make a point of saying hello to them. I'll clock their name badge, and then I can remember.
You must be doing something in your head. There must be a technique going on.
Yeah, no, you have to consciously remember it, but I will remember it, because then later when people have stuck up their hand because they're interested in a deal, I can kind of put a name to the face again, a couple of hours later. So
you remember what's important to you. I could be less terrible at remembering names. I have to be at work. It's not very cool in the meeting when you forget someone's name. But you're right. You have to make this really conscious effort. And actually, when you're introduced to people and a whole bunch of people, there's something else is going on there. You're shaking hands. You're meeting people. You're in shock. You're kind of like, oh.
Yeah. And you're quite often you're thinking, you're kind of moving
scanning
on to
the
the
next
person, so you haven't really properly. But
yeah, very good technique. Yeah. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a journalist, I think. Yeah.
All that name remembering. What did your parents want you to be?
A lawyer.
Gosh, they went wrong. They were lawyers, were they?
No. So my dad was a surveyor, and his dream was that my sister was an accountant and I was the lawyer, and then he'd be, set.
Then he could have worked here. That's the diversary Clark thing. Like get them all around the table. What's your go-to karaoke song?
I will never ever sing in public.
That's not a song I've heard. That should be a song. Office dogs, business or bullshit?
No, business.
Oh, excellent. Good choice. Have you ever been fired?
Yes.
Ooh, where were you fired?
So it's from the Virgin Cafe in Sydney, Australia.
Really? Wow. What for?
I think making crap coffee.
Really? It's
Yeah.
possible, is it? Yeah,
Well, I didn't realise I was doing it wrong at the time, but
Another British person turned up who didn't understand coffee. You know. What's your vice?
I eat too much.
Food.
Really greedy.
Sweet tooth or savoury?
No, not particularly sweet. Well, sweet as well. All of it, everything. Just love my food.
Can't go wrong with food. Any top tips then for founders or entrepreneurs?
Yes, lots of tips. I would say, bootstrap your business for as long as possible before you try to raise investment, create some value. You will get better terms, a better valuation. You'll be taken more seriously by more investors. But try and kind of get to understand how investors think, what they're looking for, network with investors if you can, well ahead of trying to raise funding, because it's quite a tough thing. And, you've got to get into their mindset. It's not about selling your business. It's understanding the things that motivate investors.
What do you mean create some terms, did you say? Create a sort of structure, or did you? What do you mean? Your first point?
Oh, the first point, you'll get better investment terms. So you'll get a better valuation, they'll be, you'll keep more of your company. Some of the detail will be, the investment's less likely to be in tranches because they'll just trust you to get on with it. All sorts of things like that.
Nice. Anything else?
Be careful about who you take money from. Not all investors are good people, so do a bit of homework on them, because, it's very difficult to get rid of a bad investor once you've taken their money. So it's good to have a whole lot of small investors, because you've got diversity. Nobody with too much power on your cap table. You get to retain control.
It's almost the best question of like, who are you? They're always asking you who you are. Like, why should I invest in you? Well, who the hell are you? Why should I let you invest?
What have you invested in before? What's your typical ticket size? What's your due diligence process? How long do you take? Because this will all inform, how seriously you take them and how long you invest in that relationship, as opposed to another one who might have more potential.
Okay, very good. So this brings us on to a little game. So we're going to play Business or Bullshit, which is where I'm going to name some stuff, Sarah, and you need to tell me whether you think it's business or bullshit. And I'm probably going to challenge you, or we're going to have some conversation about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to name some normal terms or, various things. Dee's cueing some music. You've got a paddle there. You need to hold the paddle up each time, and you need to say the word nice and clearly.
Yeah.
We're on the radio and the TV. Cool. Are you ready? Ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Conferences.
Business.
Is it?
You
didn't look convinced.
Yeah, it's not binary. Just don't go to everything. Pick the good ones.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hate conferences, but they work for some people, I think.
Yes.
Offshore tax havens.
Oh, bullshit.
Yeah? Yeah. I mean, they're hard to use. I guess no one's going to say they're a good thing. I could give you examples of when they're business, actually, where if you have got an international customer base, so you've got your customers are from all over the world, places like, they're already offshore, some of them, then there can be an argument, and this is a commercial argument HMRC would agree with. They're very hard to set up if you don't have an incredibly good argument, that someone may do business with you. For instance, they might be buying an asset or something that's doing something, that therefore they'll be put off by getting trapped into a UK tax situation where they want to keep stuff offshore, so they need to be able to invest offshore. So there are instances of them. I think I can explain that very well. But if you've got customers who are very international and don't want to get drawn into UK tax,
I get that. I think they have their purpose, don't they? But probably in my world, what's important is transparency, because anything that looks like it's potentially dodgy could
don't do it.
Stop other investors going in. It will damage the business, basically. So
it's very hard. It's almost impossible to do as a British person to have one. But anything that's offshore, even if you set the company up originally with an offshore holding company, thinking, that'll be good globally or long term, puts off banks, puts off professionals. Everyone gets upset. Let's do business class, flying business class.
Oh, well, that's the business. If your business can afford it,
hallelujah,
go for it. You can work, you can be refreshed, you can be more productive. If you're a bootstrap startup,
forget about it.
That's not where your money should be going. Investors would be very unhappy if they thought that's what their investment money was paying for.
And I always assume with business class that the business argument is that you don't get, 2 days to recover at the other end. The theory of business class is we'll make it comfortable for you flying, because when you get there, you're going to work immediately. I think probably these days people fly business class and then take 2 days off anyway. But, the theory is that, we're going to make it, you could sleep on the plane kind of thing.
Yeah.
Unlimited holidays.
Oh.
Unlimited holidays.
Bullshit.
Do you know anyone doing them?
I don't. But, just as a small business owner who works with other small businesses, how can a business plan on that basis? Although I have heard, what I've read is that when you offer it as an employer, quite often people don't take advantage.
That's the statistics basically say you take less holiday because you feel nervous about it, and the reality
you're letting
is,
your colleagues down.
Because you have to be able to do your job. So if you just bugger off, you're permanently under this question of, are you doing your job, as opposed to fixed holiday, which says even if you're in the middle of it and really you're going to let the team down, sorry, it's time for me to check out, I need a break, as our producer does. Charities, unusual question. Charities?
Business?
Yeah.
I mean, they do very good work. Many of them do very good, very important work, and, fill a gap between, what's provided. So, no, big supporter of charities. It's just as, but investment, always careful to say, is not charity. So we're not going to invest in businesses just because they do good work.
Nice stuff.
It's got to offer a return on investment for us. Otherwise we'll run out of money very quickly, won't we? So charitable work is very different from investing. But
didn't you find out bizarre how difficult it is to talk about money in this country? It's weird at times, isn't it?
It is weird. It's uncomfortable. People never think of themselves as well off, even if they are relatively. So it's a strange.
And actually, sometimes when people are very rich, I remember meeting a guy a while ago who shall remain nameless, but he was very like, oh no, I really don't have any money, and trying to give him.
Of course he does,
yeah, and he had 60 million in cash in the bank.
My God.
But honestly,
God.
And actually,
and people who have it are often quite apologetic about it. I mean, there's nothing more.
He hated spending
more unattractive than boasting about your money, but there's some happy medium, isn't there? And I don't, I think people who've been successful are made to feel a little bit ashamed of that.
Well, follow the theory exactly. At the moment, you've got to hide it because you'll get shouted, "Oh, it's all right for you, you rich." And actually, the reality is that's gone really wrong, and that we should be like, no, we should make people very comfortable, celebrate it, because then they'll spend it and they'll be happy about it. But people are hiding it even more. We're in this sort of vicious circle of drinking at lunch. Do you ever get drunk and work after lunch?
Oh, I think those days are long gone. Bullshit.
Oh, damn it. They're not in my profession. I do some of my best work. How about family dynasties?
Business. I've got no. I don't resent other
you don't have a horse
people's
in that
wealth
fight.
and success. If they're doing good things with their business and they're employing lots of people and kind of good for them.
Thought leadership?
Business, it has a place, doesn't it? But there are very few people who are really thought leaders.
Yeah.
So calling yourself, I think proceed with caution if you're calling yourself a thought leader.
It's feeding into the British inability to use any of that language very comfortably, isn't it? Let's do one more or maybe two more. Dress for success?
Business, I think to a certain extent it's true. I think, we've recently lost a lot of the formality. Men no longer need to wear ties even in the city, which is a good thing. But, you can, first impressions still count, don't they? You kind of have to look the part. And I mean, interesting you're saying that women, there's no uniform.
I find it very hard to work it out. What is the women uniform?
So it's an advantage on the one hand, but it does lead to lots of sort of wardrobe dilemmas as well.
Yeah. No, it amuses me very much because I would never know. I made the joke the other day, but I could only really tell if someone was wearing a bikini that I might think, oh, that's inappropriate. Next to that, I'm sort of, I wouldn't dare, God knows. Pitch decks, you must see a few of those.
Oh, business.
What makes a good pitch deck?
Covering all the right points that investors need to see. There's loads of great examples and guidance on the internet. So it's just, as I said before, kind of getting out of your head as the founder of the business, selling the business. It's kind of making sure you're addressing what good investors want to hear. So there are some specific things, and there's kind of a narrative flow that works without it being an identikit investor deck to everybody else. But they're very useful tools for supporting a presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for doing this. That was this week's episode of Business Without Bullshit. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Romeo. It's ciao.